Welcome to the Saynetwork podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm here with Jim Sparks.
Hello.
And also with Blake Lanier.
Good morning.
Blake is an MSW. He is also a licensed clinical social worker. And I believe today you are recording your first ever podcast episode.
It's
Is
a
that
very
right?
big day for me.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, we're really excited that it's going to be the Saynetwork podcast that is your first podcast. So it's pretty cool.
I think it deserves a tattoo.
That is a great idea.
That's a big commitment.
If only there were tattoo parlors in the state of California. It'd be a great place.
Well, you're lucky we're in PV. I doubt there is one in PV, so you're good to go.
I know a couple spots in San Pedro down the hill, though.
That's true.
All right, well, then let's get on with this. I've got tattooing to be done.
All right. On today's episode, we are talking about mental health challenges in the workplace. I think no matter, how much we love our jobs or, how much we love going to work every day, we all face challenges of some sort. And I think those challenges can sometimes affect our mental health. So it's a pretty important topic. And in this episode specifically, I want to talk about, I want to explore like what a healthy workplace culture kind of looks like. I also want to talk a little bit about burnout. I hear a lot of people say, I'm just really tired. I'm really burnt out. We'll talk a little bit about that. And also what are some maybe good steps to take if you feel like it's time to seek out therapy or anything like that. So we'll talk about that. And at the end, I also want to address this idea of, how can we build a healthy sort of emotional resilience or mental fortitude to be able to persevere or face those challenges? Because I
Mm.
think, again, we can't escape all challenges. So we've got to be able to address them in some way or another. So we'll talk about that. And at the very end, we will highlight a resource called Learning to Love. And we've got an exciting announcement related to that resource coming up. So with that, let's talk a little bit about mental health in the workplace.
Fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Here we go. All right. So Simone Biles, right? We all know Simone Biles.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, she is the GOAT for sure. She
Mm.
made headlines this last summer when she suddenly withdrew from several final events at the Olympics in Japan. And I think that whole situation really put a renewed spotlight onto the topic of mental health. I know I
Yeah.
heard more people starting to talk about it again, and I thought that was really good. And it just had me thinking, she's like the GOAT of gymnastics, and I can't even imagine the amount of physical and mental discipline that it takes to get to her level. And if somebody like her is struggling, who's as disciplined as she is, if she's struggling with mental health, then definitely other people are struggling with mental health in their profession or in their workplace. And so, I think also adding the pandemic to that, everything going on with the pandemic, I think a lot of people really feel like, maybe their stress and anxiety levels are at an all-time high even now.
Mm.
And so, I know for me, a sign that my stress or anxiety with work is getting a little high is I start to dream about work in my sleep.
Mm.
So
Wow.
if I'm at an event, and my husband can testify to this, if I'm at an event, sometimes I will wake up in a panic and I'll just rattle off like 5 things that I am dreaming that I need to do, like ASAP. And that
Yeah.
is the sign
That's
for
brutal.
me that my stress and anxiety is getting high with work. So I'm wondering, have you ever, experienced a situation or anything where your mental health or your stress and anxiety levels were high or maybe suffered a little bit because of work?
That's definitely true for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The work that I do has a pretty high stress factor associated with it.
Yep.
And for me, there's this window of time. It's usually about 48 hours. I know myself pretty well at this point in my work that if I go 48 hours without paying attention to things like sleep and my exercise routine and eating well, I know that the dashboard light comes on for me with irritability. I'm really not listening anymore. I'm a little bit more quick to snap. I'm If things frustrate me that typically wouldn't frustrate me. So irritability is really the thing that when that creeps in, yeah, work is getting to me
Yeah,
for sure. I
definitely.
need to make some readjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I do. I for better or worse, I over the years have compartmentalized my life so much because I work for the Salvation Army. I go to the Salvation Army and I'm kind of a private person as well, which makes it complicated when you're in the Salvation Army because privacy doesn't seem to be kind of a thing
it's
all the
tough.
time.
Yeah,
And so my work is at work and my home is at home and my worship is at a different place. And those tend to not leak into areas. And if something is not going right here at work, I try desperately for it to not come home and be seen anywhere else. And but the that I I don't always win. And so I find it when it does leak over, then it spills over. And so just trying to be very mindful of that. Um my my family doesn't need to know what all the my frustrations over stuff because usually my frustrations are petty, to be honest. And so it's just easier to kind of separate that. Luckily, I have a long drive, so that helps for me to kind of decompress a little bit on stuff. But there's been some moments in my life where some significant things have happened at home, and I find at work that it takes the creative part out of my brain out. It completely it like wipes it out, and I have a really hard time getting into that space, and which stinks because that's very much part of my job.
mm,
But I know that I used to not like leave work in my office. I was a hermit, but going for walks has been a really big deal for me. That's something I've learned during the pandemic of how important that is.
you bet.
And so finding those type of things that will allow me to just kind of uh like move away from that space a little bit has helped. But yeah, it starts to take away my creative part of my brain out of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we all kind of have those, like, signs. I think as we get a little older too, we learn to spot those, hopefully a little more,
You
like,
bet.
quickly and act on them. So we're gonna do a separate episode on this topic, but, there's this article that we'll talk about later, but, it's this idea that, a lot of people are, switching jobs right now, and they call it the Great Resignation, and again, we'll do a separate episode on that whole topic, but, yeah, a lot of people are considering starting new jobs, going through a lot of transition, that kind of thing. What do you think are some things to look for in a healthy, like, workplace culture for anybody who might be looking for a different job or in sort of a transitional period right now?
I think it's a really good question. And I think a lot of people are considering the health of their workplace culture
Yeah.
right now. I think because so many were out of work for a while because of the pandemic, they got a sense of what they might have been missing in life. Because work takes up a lot of time. We're at work a lot of hours out of our life. And so when we didn't have that, we got a chance to experience life without work. And in many ways, we found there are some advantages.
Yeah.
There are some things that I really have been doing without. I like those. So how do I go get those? And most of us are saying, how do I go get those? But how do I do that in a workplace environment? And so I think there's a lot of conversation about how do I go find a workplace that is going to be healthy for me? And I think part of the challenge is matching our workplace to our basic needs and our needs as a worker in whatever environment we may be. So it's hard to imagine there being this absolute list of characteristics or factors of a workplace, a checklist that you could give
Right.
to somebody to
Yeah,
say, hey, if a workplace has these 10
yeah,
things, bingo, you know you're in the right spot. I think it's a matter of compatibility. Is this a workplace that meets my needs as a worker? I would say that even when I try to think of workplace factors that might be across all environments, say something like safety. We might all agree that physical safety in a workplace is something we all should look for. But then I think, but that's even different. That's based on who you are as a worker. So I think of firefighters. Their workplace, for me, because I'm not trained as a firefighter, that's not a physically safe
Yeah,
environment.
Yeah.
definitely.
That's not a workplace that's going to meet my needs. But if you have the training, you have the experience, you've been given a skill set, and you know how to create safety in that workplace, that could be a very safe workplace for you. So I think it really is a matter of compatibility when we look at what factors are healthy for us in terms of compatibility.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it certainly feels like, whether you were let go, furloughed, whatever, it seemed like there was a period where I mean, a significant population was at home. And when you were at home, you had more time because you took away your driving time at the very minimum. And so I think it gave you some time to reassess of what it is. And sometimes that was out of necessity because maybe you were furloughed or let go. And so you're like, I need to look for another job. And so you're starting to do a new checklist of what it is because your checklist is different than when you started working however many years ago.
Yeah.
Your needs have changed.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to dream of a new checklist of
Mhm.
like what's important to me, or like where do I want to go professionally, or maybe this was like I just need to get out of this
Mhm.
genre that I'm in. And then but understanding maybe the work life balance, that was kind of like a popular topic for a while, but it didn't seem like anyone really, it was hard to kind of grasp. And I think being at home and understanding what it means to be at home and be in your neighborhood and your community and saying hi to people because you're out for a walk that you've never done before,
Yeah.
and you start to get that feeling of like, hey, I belong here, and there's a this is a good thing. And so I think then you start to look at your priorities changing, and I see a lot of companies that are transitioning and offering that. But I think the other thing, as far as like a mental health thing, is it forced us to shift how we work. Like for people that were stayed on, it shifted you how to work. We had to work through a computer screen and like meetings and stuff like that. And I think for a lot of us, we realize, hey, some of the stuff that we do or has been expected of us is unnecessary.
Mhm.
And it's just been culturally that way for generations. It turns out that was kind of unnecessary. We were able to keep up
Mhm.
without having to either be in person or to do these extra things over and over again because for a lot of companies, just shrank to get through, but you were still able to maintain and in some cases do new things out of it. So I think it was like this great time of like stop and evaluate of
Mhm.
what it is. And so
Absolutely.
I think for organizations, I know we're going to talk about that in a different one. It just makes sense. Now is the time to make those adjustments to make your places more compatible to a new thought process on working. And for people, they have the power right now. People looking for jobs strangely have the power because there's never been so many available jobs ever in the United States before, to be a little bit more like, hey, no, I'm not gonna just go and get paid for this amount. I won't do that. Or I need, like I just heard this last week that um, uh, exempt people typically have a little bit more favor with hours and dictate mandates, but now they're running into hourly. People are like, nah, I'm not working on the weekends. And normally they would be like, okay, then you don't work here. But now they're like, oh no, well, we need you and we'll figure out the weekend stuff. So it's allowing for
Mhm.
changes like that. And maybe for people to speak up a little bit more that have never been able to speak up and have that opportunity to make a new workplace culture that is good for them. I think there's workplace culture things that we all want. We want that safety. We probably want the freedom to express ourselves and how we see things going and stuff. But just some of that foundational stuff that we thought couldn't be changed is being changed right now. And
Mhm.
so I'm excited because I think the workplace culture changes drastically in the next 5 years, just out of mandates for people to be like, no, I've experienced, like, I got a little taste of that water over there. And I think we could still have that taste and still do all of this at the same time. You're seeing other countries changing their models to different work days, experimenting. So I think it's cool. And I think for uh, uh, just the what Blake was saying, the safety part of the workplace culture, it cannot be overstated. Like that's what inherently we all want. We want a place to feel safe. And when you feel safe, that's when you're at your best. And so if you're in a workplace culture or a decision making body, is your space safe?
Mhm.
Are your employees able to express themselves and share and jump in, or are they suppressed and put in their space? Because I think that model's gone, and we need to adjust that.
Mm.
Sorry, that was a long answer. I got inspired halfway through that. Got a little worked up.
Yeah, I think also trust too. It's just forced companies to have to trust their employees, and employees to even have to trust their employers a little bit more. I think that's kind of been a byproduct of all of this
Mm.
kind of that's going on, which is really interesting. So if somebody's maybe struggling in the workplace or in their job or maybe even just life in general. I'm going to kind of direct this question more to Blake in your area, but what are maybe some like signs that it might be time to seek counseling? Is burnout one of those signs?
It can be. Yeah, burnout is it definitely at the forefront of the conversation right now for a lot of people because particularly as they, like you were saying, Jim, people got away from work and experienced a replenishment of sorts. Wow, this was good that I had some time and realized what I might have been missing. So I think people now, particularly when they've gone back to work, if they went back into the same kind of workplace or the same kind of work rhythm or routine, they might be frustrated again because now a lot of time is going to work. And so they're asking this question, am I dealing with burnout? Is burnout something that I'm struggling with? And I think it's a good question for people to be asking. The challenge is that we have burnout. The symptoms of burnout can mirror the symptoms of a lot of different kind of problems that we
Mm,
have. So because burnout is so popular a topic, I think a lot of people are assuming, oh, I'm burnt out. Unfortunately, there may be a deeper level challenge that somebody is wrestling with. And so I think the conversation around burnout is a really good one, but I think we have to make sure it is burnout that we're dealing with. And I really encourage people to seek out consultation on this. If you think you're wrestling with burnout, and there are a lot of internet checklists and things, and
mhm,
that people can kind of go through. And if you say yes to 10 questions, yes, you're burned out. I think those are a good places to start.
mm,
But I think it also works well to consult with friends, family members, colleagues, for you to say, I think that I'm struggling with burnout, but let me run this by you and get your opinion on this. What do you think? And I think it's in that consultation where we get other people's input. And I think it's through the conversation and dialogue that we may see, yeah, I think this is burnout. This is classic burnout. It seems to really meet these different symptoms. Or we might hear, no, this is not burnout. This might be something totally different, which could then move us in the direction of maybe professional mental health resourcing or a change of jobs or an adjustment that we make in our relationships or our family. So again, I think it's great that we're asking this question: am I struggling with burnout? But I encourage people to keep in mind that there might be more going on than just burnout.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but burnout seems to be a little bit more of a comfortable topic for people to talk about
Yeah,
than mental health
yeah,
because it's work related and maybe it protects us from vulnerability. But
yeah,
the challenge with burnout is burnout, like so many good things, it starts with something good. Our classic definition, burnout's kind of a new word actually. We got this word in about 1974, even though it feels like it's been around forever.
yeah.
In
Mhm.
in the original definition of burnout is the component of complete dedication to a cause. And that's a good place to start if you're a worker, right? That you are so dedicated to what you do in your work. Like that's a good thing. We want workers dedicated. Unfortunately, dedication to a cause without, and here's the other component of burnout, without being able to see any kind of measurable impact of your work, that's where things can go really, really wrong. So it's the utter dedication, which can lead to the physical and emotional exhaustion. And then when you add the feeling that nothing I do makes a difference, that's when we start moving in the direction of burnout.
Yeah, I suspect, that resonates with a lot of people, I think, right now too, just during the pandemic and just all the like we were talking about stress and anxiety, things being at an all-time high. I think that definitely probably resonates with a lot
Why
of
is it
people.
why is it so hard for us as humans to get to that point though to be like I might need more than what it's just a burnout phase. Why is it so hard to like look at counseling as an option for so many to get to that point, particularly when it involves workplace stuff or affecting workplace stuff?
I think it's a great question. As much as I am really happy to see and experience and hear about all that's being done to reduce stigma around mental health problems in our communities, we're still very much in a larger community of stigma around mental health.
Yeah.
There are still many that believe that if you experience some kind of mental health challenge, that if you just worked hard enough, if you just had more willpower, if you just prayed harder, there might be something that you could do about it. And so there's still this messaging that mental health problems really aren't problems. You just need to adjust your thinking or you need to live a certain way. And so there's still a lot of stigma and we can internalize that stigma. I mean, I'm a therapist, but even still, I recognize a lot of times my guardedness around saying, "Hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I need help. Hey, I'm not doing well right now." So even as somebody who really is an ambassador for reducing stigma in our community, I even internalize messaging around stigma, and so I have to overcome that. So I think there's a big barrier for us to acknowledge this might be a little bit more than burnout. Now that being said, if burnout is a way to start the conversation that people are saying, "Am I burned out?" and then they're going the next step to say, "Or do I maybe need to explore something different?" Then in that case, I'm really happy we're talking about burnout because it's certainly a foot in the door
Yeah,
to the conversation about mental health.
definitely.
Yeah, it feels like at times that you're giving up something in order to get to that point to go and get help. There's a feeling of just giving up, which it's not.
Not at all.
It's taking a step forward
Great point.
actually. And
Yeah.
so getting around that feeling of giving up or failing, feeling like you're failing because you're not like everybody else at work or even at home or around that seem to have it together.
Yeah.
You feel like failing as it's troubling, probably, obviously, but is kind of getting through that struggle, the internal struggle of getting to that point
Yeah, for sure.
is a big challenge.
Yep. And if you add loneliness to it, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not uncommon that when we struggle, we think we're the only one struggling. And so within a workplace environment, we may look around and think, why is everybody else doing so well?
Mm,
And there's a strong possibility that's not the case. A lot of people are struggling,
right.
but there can be this feeling like, there must be something that I'm not doing right. I'm the only one who's really going through a tough time, so I probably shouldn't say anything. I should probably figure this out on my own.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what we were just talking about with a safe place. If your work environment is not a safe place, it could be preventing people from getting help because they're worried that their job might be gone
You bet.
and they or affected, or they could be seen as not fit enough to carry out their activities because they've got some sort of mental health thing that they're dealing with at the moment. And so that could suppress a lot of that as well.
You can.
And
Yep.
so just reemphasizing the importance of having a safe place to be able to talk about that
Mhm.
as a positive thing.
Yep.
Mhm.
Good point.
And also, Blake, you recently wrote an article for Peer Magazine about steps that people could take to find a therapist. What are some of those steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. I think the title of the article was, you should talk to somebody about that, or you should see somebody about that, because that's a really common expression, and most of us know what we mean by that. And all of us will casually, even sometimes, say, "You should talk to somebody about that." But it's really a complicated process to find someone to talk to, particularly if you're talking about a professional mental health resource. We really have to evaluate what steps we have to take because it can be pretty complex. And so I think a lot of people will not get help if they need it because it can seem so daunting,
Yeah.
because it seems so confusing and overwhelming. And it really doesn't have to be. So thanks for asking the question because I really think there's a lot of information that people need to be able to get help they might need. So the first step is to consider how you'll pay for the professional mental health resource. There are options for professional mental health resourcing that you don't have to pay for. So if you know going into it, hey, I think I need help, but I'm not going to have money to pay for
Yeah.
it, cool. That tells you what your first step is going to be. And so, if that's your first step, then certainly you're going to want to look for community mental health, typically what they're called in various communities, community mental health or community service boards, CSBs. They may be called something different in different communities, but it's going to be something along those lines. And those are services that are funded in such a way that individuals can access a mental health professional without having to pay for that. Some of those will take insurance as well. But the idea is that you're going to take that step to make that call to say, hey, how do I talk to somebody about what I'm going through? So even if you don't have the ability to pay, there are still resources. There are also resources called sliding scale counseling services. And so, if you don't have money, or if you have a little bit of money, you think maybe I could pay $3, $5,
Mhm.
$50, then you're going to want to look for, and Google searches will really help you
Okay.
with this. If you were to Google in your area, because a lot of Googling is location based, so it's gonna come up with some hits in your area, but these are counseling services that are funded in such a way, funded by a third party or internally, that they will provide services based on your ability to pay. And so they'll ask you some questions about household income and proof of income and those kind of things. And it's a pretty easy process to go through in most places. And they're going to figure out a number. And again, that number might be $1, it might be $50, it might be $85. It really just depends. And then you can access a mental health professional in that way. And then finally, if you have a job that has insurance coverage and you have insurance benefits, on the back of your insurance card will be a number, call for benefits. And so you'll want to call that number. There might even be information on the back of your card that says for behavioral health call. You'll want to find out from your insurance company, is behavioral health or mental health coverage provided? And if so, how does that work? What does that look
Yeah.
like? And they'll tell you things like how many sessions you can go to, whether you have a deductible, what your out of pocket expense. They're going to walk you through all of that. So insurance is a good way to pay as well. So that really is the first step, is figuring out how am I going to pay for this.
Mhm.
And again, that doesn't mean that you have to have money to get mental health support. It just means that's really your deciding which road you're going to go down to access a therapist. And then beyond that, what is important is for individuals to make a call to the therapist
Mhm.
ahead of time and say, hey, I'm scheduled to come in. I'm going to see you on Thursday. This is the first time. Maybe it's your first time. This is the first time I've ever talked to somebody. What is this going to be like? What should I
Yeah.
expect? What questions are you going to ask? Is there anything I need to bring with me? Do I need to prepare? Not only is that information going to be helpful in possibly reducing your anxiety a little bit, we can still feel really nervous about going. That's totally normal, but it's gonna reduce that nervousness just a little bit to know what to expect and to ask those questions. The cool thing about what that really does is kind of the side effect of having that conversation and getting those questions out there is it gives you a chance to interact and dialogue with your therapist.
Mhm.
And so if the person on the other end of the phone is off-putting, they don't want to answer your questions, they say, you'll have to come in. I'm not talking with you about that. That may be a good clue. This might not be a good therapist to
Mm.
connect with.
Mhm.
And so, being able to talk with a therapist is, even if it's just for 3 to 5 minutes, is a really good way to get a feel for maybe how this person, what an encounter with this person might be like. And then your first session for you to go in and for you to ask questions of the therapist. This is something that a lot of people don't realize they can do because therapists are mental health professionals. And when I say, I think I use the term therapist broadly,
Mhm.
but I'm referring to therapists, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. There are a lot of different kinds of mental health professionals out there. But because people are so used to them being the ones that ask questions, individuals don't realize they can ask questions of the professional as well.
Yeah.
And I really recommend that people do
Mm.
that and that they ask questions like, what is this going to be like? What experience do you have working with people who are going through what I go through? Tell me a little bit about you and your style of working as a mental health professional. A big one to ask is, how will you and I know if I'm getting better? How will you and I know if we're actually making progress? But it's okay to interview the therapist and ask some questions. One of the things that some might be asking just listening to this about this kind of interviewing the therapist idea is, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Why should I be asking these questions? And this is what's really unique about working with a mental health professional. We know from the research that the effectiveness of mental health support has a lot to do with the quality of the interaction and the quality of the relationship between the therapist and the person. And so that means that it really only a small percentage of the effectiveness of mental health support, we know from the research, has to do with where they went to school,
Mhm.
what therapeutic modality they use, whether it's scientific or whether it's more conversational and those kind of things. What really matters is the motivation that you bring and the fit between you and the therapist. You know,
Mhm.
if we have a cavity, I'm assuming this is the case with dentistry. I'm sure dentists might listen to this and say, actually, no, the relationship also matters. But typically, as I understand cavity filling, as I've had that done in the past, if you have a cavity, you can go to a variety of dentists,
Mhm.
and how you feel about the dentist may not matter so much. The cavity is filled the same way. I'm imagining there's an industry standard
Mhm.
cavity filling approach.
We hope.
I would hope.
I
We
would
hope.
hope so. So it's not dependent on the relationship. Mental health is very, very different. It actually really does matter the goodness of fit between you and the person you're working with. If you don't feel safe, you don't trust the
Mhm.
person, you don't like just anything about the dynamic, I recommend people give it 1 to 3 meetings with the professional. And if at the end of those 1 to 3 meetings you just say, no, this is just
Yeah.
not a good fit, move on. Go work with somebody else. Us therapists know that's how it works. So we will not be offended if you say, you know what, thank you for your time, but I'm going to keep looking.
Mhm.
That's how the process works.
Mm.
Mhm.
So for it to be effective, I really hope listeners will hear it. Don't just go to the first person and say, I don't like it. It's not comfortable, but I guess I have to do this. No,
Yeah.
it's okay to invest in this process. It's a really important one.
Mhm. Definitely. Just 2 thoughts. One, I did not realize how accessible services are to people, whether, they have insurance or they don't have insurance, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. It seems like services are very accessible. So that's something I just learned that's really cool.
Mm.
And secondly, what do you think about sort of, with the pandemic, more things are online. So I've seen kind of a rise in popularity of online like therapy sessions and things. What are your thoughts on that different kind of less traditional like modes of therapy in terms of like when I think of traditional, I think of, you go into your therapist's office and you go and you have a session with them. What do you think about online sessions or those types of things?
It's a really good question, and we are seeing a lot more of that in our communities, and I think it's a really good approach. One reason is because it makes accessibility a bit easier. For a couple of reasons. One is those services are offered to individuals who might live in rural communities or communities that don't have easy access to mental health professionals. And so, if I'm in a state and there's a provider that's available virtually, then we can take geography out of the equation. And so, I think the accessibility has been a really cool part of that. I also think that there are many, many people out there who feel a bit more comfortable with texting or video
Mhm.
or phone call. And so, if it's removing the barrier, if an individual is able to access mental health support by overcoming this barrier that is there of having to actually go in and sit face to face and kind of experience that awkwardness, if this is what allows you to access that relationship that could be very helpful for you, man, I'm all for
Mhm.
it. What I would encourage people to do with those services, because there are a lot of them out there that are popping up and springing up in our communities, I really encourage that you look for a service and also a provider, however your access, whether it's through a company, like a centralized company that connects you to a therapist, or if you're calling directly to a therapist that may be advertising online, offering what's called telemental health, is
Mhm.
what that's called. Make sure you're working with somebody who is fully licensed. There's a big difference. Anybody can actually go out in the community and say, I'm a counselor, or I am a support, or I am they could call themselves a number of things. It's very different, though, to say, I am a licensed mental health provider,
Mhm.
whether that be a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed psychologist, number of different things. You're looking for license because that means the individual has had to go through a series of steps to document for the public that they are committed to principles of ethical treatment and that they receive good continuing education to make sure they know what they're doing. So, whether you're accessing a person face to face or online through texting and telemental health, look for a licensed provider.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yep.
we'll link the Blake's article as well with Peer with the different steps and information in there as well to our show notes.
Mm.
There's one more topic I want to just kind of end with on this episode. I think every workplace has its challenges, and there's only kind of so much we can do sometimes. You know, I recently read that some of the top stressors in the workplace are things like workload, lack of clarity on job responsibilities, and like organizational policy changes and things like that. Sometimes there's only so much that we can do to influence those factors, but I think it's important to talk about ways that we can build up a healthy sort of emotional resilience or even like a healthy mental fortitude to be able to persevere through some of these challenges in a healthy way. What do you guys think are some of the ways that we can kind of develop a healthy mental fortitude
Mm.
in the workplace?
I This question is very challenging to me.
It's a
This
hard
is
one.
this is
Yeah.
something I
It's a
feel
hard
like
one.
I've been like marinating in for years on that. Not just as a supervisor, but as a worker in itself. It's like, can you just get over it? Like,
Mm.
you're like, is it really? Do you need to hang on to that? Is that what's doing that? And so I've struggled with this. I've probably been good at times, and I've probably been really bad at times at kind of this environment of healthy fortitude.
Mm.
It's a very fun way to say it,
Isn't
but
it?
I don't I don't know. I don't even know if I have a good answer. I think it kind of comes back to workplace confidence and that kind of safety. And uh I've always worked personally that I might get fired soon. Like that's always been it's always there. It's always been lingering. I was not the top choice to be hired here at THQ. I know that. It was told to me by the person who hired me.
Oh,
so
goodness.
ever since then I've worked as if I wanted to be that top choice.
Huh.
And I found that when I can't get over things, when things aren't going well for me and my little world, tiny little world, it's because I have strayed away from what I do best and working at trying to be the best that I can be in my job. And I've gotten lazy in that. And so now other things have occupied my time and occupied my space where I wouldn't have cared before. I wouldn't have even noticed. And I find that the more diligent I've been at trying to stay and keep it personal of like, I need to be better at this. This is definitely an area I just noticed that I'm not up to speed on. I got to work on that because I'm trying to round out myself in case, which hopefully will never happen, that someone's gonna be like, "Hey, we need to talk to you about your job."
Mm.
That I could sit there and say, because I've had it said to me appropriately. I worked at a camp. I was terrible. I was I was good in the summer. Summers were great. Turns out there was more than just summer and a full time job. And this guy wouldn't say anything bad about anybody and really wasn't one for accountability. And he sat me down in an employee review and said, "Hey, I got something to tell you." I go, "Okay, great. Let's just get this over with and move on." Right. Because I know he's not going to say anything. And he said, "You're not very good at your job."
Mm.
And he was very deliberate at what he said. And he said, "You're not this and this and this and this. And I wasn't even mad. Usually in those situations, you start to be like, oh no, I'm going down fighting, you know? But I got caught. Like I knew I wasn't good. I knew I wasn't terrible. I knew that I was playing games in my office when I was not supposed to. I knew all that. And so I wanted to work hard. And the times where I'm like driven by some idea or something in my work that is exciting to me and this building like this energy inside me, all that other stuff I don't deal with. Like it doesn't, it's not as big of a deal. I'm like, oh no, that's fine. We'll just work through that. That's fine. Because I'm so excited about what we've got going. And when that excitement diminishes, that's when all this other stuff is. And that's when it's harder for me to get over things. And maybe as a
Mhm.
supervisor, harder to not just give a more positive outlook on things. And so it's like when your sports team is winning, there's no issues. You're good. You're
Mm.
winning. And when your sports team is not winning, it is an absolute dumpster fire. And I'm not going to be able to get over this until they start making some moves. And so it feels like it's in that genre for me. When things are going good personally, and I feel like I'm in a good work groove and a good thing going, then I could get over things well. And but when I'm personally not in that groove or finding purpose in what I'm doing, I get stuck on the other stuff. I will say, not because Megan is a coworker for 10 years. Megan and I have had desks near each other for a long time, but we've been incredibly lucky as far as drama and that kind of stuff. So we don't have a lot of that kind of stuff that we've really had major blowups or anything like that in our department. You could agree at any point. And
I'm nodding.
um, no, it's been pretty good, and we've had good moments, but we've also had some tough moments to kind of work through and try to sort that stuff out. And I think looking back, some of the heavier times were lack of to inspiration and and cohesiveness in that, and it was harder to get through.
Mhm.
I don't know if that all makes sense, but
Mm.
Mhm.
I think it's great that you're asking this question about how do we build mental fortitude. I'm with you, Jim. That's a great word. I imagine I'll probably use that word later today just because it's fun to say.
I will too. I totally will. I'm just going to use it horribly wrong. I'm already mentally prepared for that. So someone's going to nod at me and be like, "Oh yeah," but it's going to be given in the wrong context. I just know it.
Yeah, you got to be careful not to rush it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really
Plan it out.
know. Yeah, plan it out, map it out.
Yeah, this fortitude on the fries and fantastic.
But I like this question because it gets us thinking about what is something I can do in the
Mhm.
midst of a really difficult situation. Oftentimes, when we're in those difficult situations, particularly if it's a work related situation, it's very easy for us to look for how this situation is a result of somebody else's shortcomings,
Mm.
Mm.
somebody else's problems, which takes us out of a sense of agency, a sense of effectiveness. And so we begin with this assumption a lot of times, well, I'm doing my part. I'm doing everything okay. If only they would change, if only the system would change, or the rules would change, or policies. And so I think your question really turns that sense of ownership back in our direction. And we say, oh, what is it I could do to build? I think you said resiliency. How can I build
Mhm.
resiliency? And this is really I think a good starting point is for us to ask the question, where can I find a sense of agency? And I would say a starting point is asking yourself, what need is not being met in this workplace or in this, even in this situation in the workplace? If things are not going well, if we're stressed, if we're not productive, if there is a problem, it's a good sign that some kind of a personal need is going unmet. So I think one of the things that we have to do is figure out, what need do I have that is going unmet right now? Is it the need for space? Like maybe I need space in my work environment and I'm not getting it. Is it the need for connectedness? Do I
Mhm.
feel isolated and on my own? Is it the need for affirmation that I'm doing a good job? I think the first question we have to ask is, what is it that's really important to me that somehow is just not happening right now? Because that then gives us something we can do something with.
Mhm.
Then the question becomes, how can I go get that need met? Hopefully in this situation. How can I identify what I'm needing so that maybe we can rework this situation for me to get some of that. Maybe the work situation is not something you can change, though. So then we can ask ourselves the question, how do I look in other areas of my life to meet that need? I go back to something we were talking about earlier about how much time we spend at work. I think a lot of us put a lot on our jobs to give to us to meet our needs. We expect a lot out of our work because we're there a
Mhm.
lot, right? We're not just looking for a paycheck, we're looking for a lot of our psychological needs to be met as well.
Mm.
So we're putting a lot on our job. It's a tall order. And so I think what we have to begin doing is asking ourselves the question, where can I get some of those needs met outside of my work?
Mhm.
And so maybe we look to relationships, we look to hobbies, we look to opportunities, we look to a lot of different areas to go meet that need in a way that we're not asking work to do. And another reason I like that you asked this question is because to the ability to say, what is work doing for me? And do I want to keep working here? Which a lot of people are asking right now
Yeah.
Yeah.
because of the pandemic, and which is why, and I think you have a podcast coming out on
Yeah.
the mass exodus. I think the choice to actively leave your place of employment is for many a matter of privilege. You know, it's a point of privilege to be able to say, I don't have to work here anymore. I'm going to go work somewhere else. That's a choice that not everybody feels they have.
Mhm.
Some people have to continue in their job for one reason or another. A lot of barriers that really keep people committed to a job. And so I think that in those positions, people have to really ask, well, then what can I do in this job that I cannot leave? Which is where it comes back to this matter of how do I build mental fortitude, which is what can I do?
Mhm.
And so we have to really stop thinking about work as the only way we can get needs met and look to other areas of our life as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Long-winded answer,
Yeah.
No,
a lot
No,
of
that was really
snaking
good.
through a lot of different
it,
areas, but
it's important.
Yeah, that's really good. All right. Well, just shifting gears a little bit here, I want to highlight a resource that we have one series out already. It's called the Learning to Love series, and we've
We, the
done
youth department.
yes, youth department. I should clarify there. So if you go on to sayconnect.com, you can see a three-part series on special needs, and so that has been out for a little while. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. If not, go check it out. But I am really excited to share that we are actually developing another series on mental health as well. And so Blake is going to be a part of that series. So we're really excited about that. And if you want to kind of keep up or follow up on when that'll be available, be sure to just check our social media. We'll post updates and things like that on when you'll be able to find that, what the topics under sort of this umbrella of mental health will be. So make sure you check that out. It's on our social media. You can follow us on Say Connect on Instagram or Saynetwork on Facebook.
Yeah, and it's not just like with the Learning to Love series. It's conversation starters. It's not just videos too. It's like these are we want people we want to be talking about and start to sort some of this stuff out. There's also some practical resources that are
Yes.
available that you could get as well. One of the most practical one from the first series is a form that parents could fill out that talks about their kids and when I first saw this form, I was like, like when someone invents something, you're like, why didn't I think about that? You're like
yep.
frustrated. You're like, it's so obvious. This is an obvious resource that I think every core youth worker should be putting out. You as a parent could fill out this form. It gives some needs of your children and kind of how they are, and it just gives the youth worker like a little bit of a playbook to work with your kids. And they're different. Like I have 3 kids. How we go about disciplining them is very kind of different between the 3 of them because they all handle it very differently. One I could look at and it's done, and the other one's like,
Hmm.
I look at it and he's like, huh, what's up? So, but the youth worker to have that in their back pocket of different needs and how they may respond to different things
Mm.
is significant, particularly if they have special needs of some sort. So those are of great value. They're not just videos. The videos are great. We want you to watch the videos,
Hmm.
but there's also some very good practical resources, which we'll be working on too with the next series.
Yeah, Heather's from our department has taken the lead on this project, and I love that she's really designed this with the core at the focus of it,
Yep.
and how to make some practical, informational pieces and also practical resources accessible and available to the core. And so it's definitely worth the time to go check it out. I'm not just plugging it because it came out of our department, but I genuinely think it's a very quality and helpful resource for sure.
Hmm.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps things up. Blake, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank
for
you
being
for
with
having me.
us.
First one.
I know. That's so cool. Anything we talked about in this episode is linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Saynetwork podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube so you don't miss out on new content. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. We'll see you guys.